this place looks significant. I can really go out and I see London Bridge from your window. Jump onto the topic today, which is the data transformation in CPG.
So across the supply chain, obviously we have data, but we also have parameters which drive the optimization. So really it's a data plus parameters journey, and that's often an area of great challenge.
This video is brought to you by us, SCMDOJO. We provide awesome courses, guides, best practices for supply chain community. Hi folks, welcome to one more episode of Supply Chain Show. And today's episode is special because I am sitting in front of London Bridge with Chris, who is a partner of the biggest consulting company, 𝐬𝐤𝐤. Chris, how are you?
Welcome. That's great to have you here.
Good. Thank you for having me. Fantastic summer. So quick introduction of yourself, please.
Yeah, of course. So Chris Andrews, partner here with 𝐬𝐤𝐤, focused on supply chain transformation. I spent the last around 20 years now working with major consumer products companies and seen everything from massive transformations powered by digital recently, going all the way back to kind of early ERP and all those kind of moves that people made 15, 20 years ago. So great to see the evolution and a really exciting time to be in the sector.
In the sector, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about, Chris is one of them, he's got more than 6 years experience in data transformation. So today we'll talk about supply chain data transformation in CPG industry. What are the challenges, opportunities, what are top tips we can get from the top consultant, for free. This is the probably the most best thing you were ever gonna get, right? Thanks to SCMDOJO. But I want to touch base before we do that. This place looks significant. I can really go out and I see London Bridge from your window. How you feel to be in this kind of office,
Well, on top of that, Muddassir, so this is the global HQ of 𝐬𝐤𝐤. So you're really at the epicenter of everything that we do.
Wow.
And like you said, over the street you have the Tower of London, Tower Bridge, River Thames right outside. So if you haven't been here, you should pay a visit and spend your vacations in London for sure.
For sure. I mean, he's just here all the time anyway. No, so we'll jump onto the topic today, which is the data transformation in CPG. Which PPG means is a new term I think used for FMCG. Previously before. How the typical journey look like of transformation, right? So if you just explain that one first.
Yeah, perfect. So if I sort of contextualize that, we're working with the biggest consumer products companies in the world. So whether it's food, beverage, cosmetics, typically 10 billion plus companies.
Wow.
So, massive global presence. They have money to invest, I guess, which is why they're experimenting and really progressing quite aggressively on these digital transformation journeys. If we think about what the journey typically looks like, there's often a trigger or a catalyst coming from the top of the organization, so from the C-suite, from the exec, and really it could be triggered by a couple of things. So maybe a massive transaction or a deal, so merging a couple of companies or spinning off a company. It could be triggered by really competitive pressure and noticing that your kind of sector or your environment has changed and you need to kind of make a leapfrog forward. Or it could just come through natural evolution where maybe your tech landscape has aged and it's ready to start replacing with some modern technology. So a couple of different triggers. What that journey typically looks like, if we're thinking about supply chain, starting with that end-to-end picture in mind is always a great place to begin. So covering plan, source, make, deliver, serve, so all the different functions. And then really, understanding across all of that, where is going to drive the most value? Is it a service, trigger that you're trying to solve? Is it planning optimization? Is it sourcing? So really understanding where you think that the value is going to come from. And then, we've seen a couple of different approaches in terms of how you actually tackle this journey. So some companies looking at where's the greatest benefit and which technology do we line up to kind of unlock those, which gives you maybe a 10 or 15 stage roadmap with different technologies. So I'm talking about maybe blockchain, IoT, some of the advanced automation that we're seeing now, like AI, ML, and so on. So you can take this kind of tech-led approach where you're trying to shoot different problems with different pieces of tech. The other one is more of a longer-term play with different partners. So we see a lot of companies, all publicly available, a lot of companies working with Microsoft, Google, SAP, and really committing to maybe a 5 to 10 year journey on their particular platform.
Wow.
So you have this other, kind of path or other
Right.
route where it's more of a platform-based journey where you know that you're going to invest heavily in a particular tech, and you start to build the capability on top of that as a kind of longer-term investment. So those are the two different flavors that I've seen.
Cool. So just segregate those. I think triggers are fantastic. One is the technology driven, with the partners like Microsoft, etc. Second is the what happened with coming from the top. They see some challenges going forward, and they need to be top of the game because the tech will play a big role anyway. So in either case, when you go and you've been asked to consult or advise, what would be, let's call it, a typical challenges? I mean, or maybe you want to have that one strand have a different challenges than the other.
Yeah, it's interesting because you will know that every kind of project, every engagement is very different. So from attempting to deliver these, some of them successful, others where maybe the client changes direction, you really see the whole gamut of challenges across organizations. But if I simplify it back, it comes down to probably three things, which I know we were discussing earlier on before the session. So ignoring the kind of technology angle, because companies will invest, they will inevitably make the technology work. So putting that to one side, it really comes down to firstly the process. So always easier to try and automate or digitalize a process that's working. If you try and sort of do that to something that's broken or dysfunctional, all you see is the same result, maybe in an accelerated manner. So it comes down to classic process discipline. Are you standardized? Are you structured? Are you well defined? Is it clear where the handoffs are? So the end-to-end process and taking that view. So having that watertight before you invest heavily is a good way to begin. So you have that process level. I think then, everyone always talks about data, master data. I think if I broaden that slightly, so across the supply chain, obviously we have data, but we also have parameters which drive the optimization. So really it's a data plus parameters journey. And that's often an area of great challenge. It could come down to, either people don't really understand the application of that data. There maybe isn't a standard that they can subscribe to. And ultimately, when you put all of the parameters in and press the optimize button, very few people really know what's going to happen. So you have a bit of that black box thing going on as well. So process, data, and parameters, and then finally it comes down to people and, I suppose, knowledge. What we've seen probably the past 3 years post pandemic and all of the volatility over recent times is a real shortening of tenure in role. So if you think about a demand planner in Europe, perhaps they might only do that role for 9 months and then move on to something else, graduate and progress up.
It used to be 2.5, 2 years before.
Exactly.
When I was a demand planner. Right. So you mentioned process, data, and parameters, and then you mentioned the people, knowledge, and competencies development. Right. So I've got experience to share in all of them, which probably gonna form more in-depth question on this. So I've made some videos on this, and unless you standardize, you cannot digitalize, right? Because you have to write, almost like the input output to code something or even buy our technology, right? So, for example, you've been hired by the C-suite to come and digitalize this, and then you actually realize there's a lot of work to be done on process standardization. So how you convince them that okay, you got to do this before you actually buy the tech or create the tech?
Yeah, it's a very very hot topic, I think. So I think the general trend. I think we've kind of got through this. Maybe it finished a year or two ago. This wave of massive kind of speculation on technology. So we've seen so many supply chain startups emerge the past 2 years, and I think that probably peaked about a year ago. So I think we've kind of seen a bit of a tail off now in terms of the wild speculation on new technology. But what we would say, and I think this is very consistent with the 3 layers that we just talked about, it always comes back to the principles of how you want to drive your transformation. So we would always advocate, and I personally would advocate that having the the process, the data parameters, and the people and capability in place before embarking on something very ambitious is a no-brainer. Without those, you are destined to fail. What we can do and we can help clients with is the quick experimentation, the fail fast. So there's no harm in trying things out because you always learn from that experience. In the past, large programs would take a couple of years before you kind of find out the result. I think now with more agile ways of working, cloud solutions, you can find that out in a couple of weeks
without not spending too much money on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really. So if you have to change direction and do something different.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Great. Now, so great point on this. I like the agile approach because this is where most of the people struggle. Okay, 6 months time, finding a lot of money. If you fail fast, you haven't spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you can shift the direction of your ship. Now, I'm not going to go to data part because one of the biggest complaint, and you see hundreds of thousands of ports, shit in, shit out data. We're not going to do.
Okay.
I'm not going to go because everybody knows that needs to be done. Having said that, a lot of people don't invest money on it. Right.
Correct.
There's one person who is a master data guy. He's the grumpiest person on the planet on the plant. And then
you've
met him as well. And nobody wants to talk to him because he's always right, or she is always right. But these guys are always my friend because I listen to them. But this is the problem, right? That somehow we need more that grumpy people, not just one person. Now, jokes aside, I'm going to discuss the parameter part because I think. With the whole concept of generative AI, right? And now people are literally obsessed with it, and it will be coming more and more. If you want to use AI-driven decision making, and now there's a push of use your own data or train your AI models of your own corporate data, so it can do the supply chain automation of some sort, customer service automation of some sort. Okay, but to train those models, because people think AI just know by itself, it doesn't, right? You have to train the model, LLM models or whatever models you have.
Exactly.
Okay. But to train those models, you got to know your parameters, right? And I think a lot of people, even a lot of supply chain smart people, can't define their own business parameters. It's a very technically difficult question, but I hope you can give some guidance on it.
Yeah, for sure. So you've hit the nail on the head, I think, in terms of that introduction. If we think about some of the new technologies, so I mean, everyone's talking about generative AI at the moment. I think it has its particular use cases in terms of content generation, in terms of maybe the enhanced chatbot and customer response and things. If we just pivot back to the kind of standard AI and machine learning that I think in supply chain, ever since we've been running stat forecasts and things using algorithms, I think we've had people in that world. So I think it's quite an established kind of competency within supply chain, albeit it's often hidden in a center of excellence, in the back office, in a digital brain somewhere, and not really at the fingertips of most of the supply chain workforce. And that's something that we will have to change. So just thinking about the parameters then. So I'll pick a couple of very simple ones just because it's front of mind. So things like lead times or safety stock parameters. If I stick with lead times, often you would maybe implement a new process or a new bit of technology, and when you get it out of the box and plug it in, you would put in the parameters that are roughly right. So you would have your lead time set up. What we then see is maybe during the passage of time, people have changed transport providers, they've switched transport lanes, they've made some changes to their network, and those lead times just become completely out of date, but they're never revisited. So people know what they are, but they don't really have the time or their finger on the pulse to make those changes. That's where we see AI being used now for things like smart parameters. So let me track all of the actual movements. I'll get you the actual lead time, and then I'll transplant it and put it in your ERP or your planning system for you. So we're seeing a lot of that kind of scraping, smart parameterization, and automation of that.
So there's the bots who's basically reading the actual PO to delivery lead times, saying, and this is, I'm going to give you a really quick example just to prove this point. So we know that if you reduce the lead time, you can reduce inventory in a typical MRP or reorder point model. Okay. So I was a supply chain manager for Warwick. They have a typical 90 days, lead time from China or, long lead time supply chain. Then they said it's going to take 2 days to booking, and we have a work order for 7 days because when you release a work order, you close the work order to the shipping. It was ridiculously long, 4 months lead time. But actually, when I did the study, the time went to order, when the rank container arrived, it was actually 6.5 weeks.
Okay.
Right. And then it doesn't take 2 days to book because they book it today because they're doing nothing. The best one was that work order released tonight, if the capacity balances are there, you can actually close it tomorrow.
Okay.
Right?
So you can slash it.
So
massively.
basically, the inventory was driven. I was thinking, why are we driving so much inventory? Because it was all, as soon as we did nothing else, we just did the same study of our manual, that, okay, what is our actual lead time from PO to receive, a work order to close? We cut it down by 40%. Guess what? The inventory reduced by 20%. Just by doing that. So if the bots are doing this and then suggesting it to the planners that you should change it or maybe input if after study, I think that will be a great application. Very good example.
No, I agree. And we're seeing that either being tested or deployed at quite large scale now. Two builds on top of that. So you talked about the kind of decision science, decision support. So the new, probably the past 2 years, the new kind of category of software, called decision intelligence. So companies like Era, that you see out in the market, they're really focused on, as well as the parameters, also how do I bring together all this kind of supply chain or commercial information from disparate systems and put it in front of the user, in front of the planner, to allow them to either click, yes, I accept the decision, or if it's, if I set it below a certain threshold, so maybe everything that's below a 10K purchase order, let the bot just go and execute. So, software like that does provide the platform. It's called decision intelligence. It will allow you to radically multiply the amount of decisions that, a supply chain person can take or an organization in its entirety can take. And that's executing that decision as well and kind of writing it back in the system. So that's kind of the first area. The second is, we've talked about the smart parameters. We've talked about the quality of process, the people. It's then really, how do you bring that together in a kind of disciplined way? So that's where we see, a lot of companies using things like, Procter & Gamble. They have this work system, integrated work system, IWS, where really they kind of have a very regimented way of working, where maybe every morning you will go through the same checklist and you will check all of these parameters, you will check all of the decisions and make sure that they are in tolerance or they've been executed. So I think having that work system wrapper is also a good way to drive the
almost standard work of implementation. Okay, so conscious of time, I need to move forward. I think I could ask more questions on this, but I'm not going to. Quickly touch base on the knowledge part, right? Okay, so I saw myself, even though when I did the data collection project with my clients and when I was Bridgestone, is only very few people who have this knowledge of to do any digital transformation. You almost, it's kind of IT project, but not IT project, right? But you have to almost follow the, let's call it Agile Project Management, which is associated with IT, which is, for example, tech development, scenario testing, after kind of go live issues, the training of it, regardless what tech you pick, right?
Exactly,
So even though it's not IT project, I think all the supply chain people should know that's kind of project management. So my question, but then I realize the teams are not ready. There is no pre-assessment of digitalization competencies are done. Right? Just I've seen a company where a CPO bought $300,000 of procure tech. Only 2 people used it. After 1 year, they couldn't even renew the contract. The engagement wasn't there, not because something wrong with the tech or they didn't need it. The only problem was the people was just not there to use it. How do you see that challenge?
Yeah, we do. So I think this is getting a bit into the kind of tips
the challenges
or maybe some of the challenges. So I think some of the points you've mentioned, I could map those out across almost every technology implementation program. It doesn't matter whether you're doing source to pay, advanced planning, TMS, WMS, ERP, it doesn't matter. It's the same challenges that will happen at the same point in time in the program. So you can change the content, you can change the subject matter, but you can preempt all of those challenges because you know that they're going to come. I think now we see probably less of a challenge on the technology side. The testing, the robustness of performance. In general, the technology will work. It's been tried and tested and used in so many companies. It comes down to the people and particularly how you drive adoption. So you don't end up with the 2 users post go live. And the approach that we often take, it's quite a simple approach, but it's putting those users at the center of the program on day one. So when you show up, when you mobilize the program, having if it's a global company with 40 operations in 40 countries, then having key super users identified from each of those, or as many of those as possible, getting them into the program and mobilizing it on day one.
Very nice.
So they own the requirements, they own the design, they own the build, they've signed off all the testing, and then there's kind of no excuse to receive and use the solution.
I mean, the change management is part of it. Do you believe on doing a bit of change management exercise before, or just, nah, it's okay, just good to go?
Yeah, we do. So we have dedicated change teams that sort of have all the methodologies. Sure. They will analyze in minute detail the impact on an individual's role, what they might be feeling through the change, and so on. But we like to pair that with with our functional experts as well. So there's nothing better if you're a demand planner going through a massive change, having someone there that kind of knows change inside out, but then also knows demand planning and knows the ins and outs of the actual role and the system that you use. So we try and pair those two together.
Good. So I think I talked about 3 challenges. One of them is already covered, the people part, and you explained very well that you should get the super users, at least as many people from the day one, mobilize them from the business case, the implementation, the testing parts, and all. Yeah. I think that's a great idea, and just don't leave it to one of the IT guys and one of the project managers. That's a bad idea. I've seen it happening. No, so that's fine. So what are the other 2 challenges you will pick in this transformation? I mean, there are many anyway, but the top 2, top of your head.
Yeah, so people or companies always get very hung up on the business case at the start. I mean, we all recognize you need a business case to make the project fly and to secure the funding. But I think time is better off invested in winning the hearts and minds to make the program successful.
Okay.
As opposed to defining all the benefits in level 5 level of detail, which it will never be accurate. Yeah. So I think there's get it just accurate enough to get the program scoped and out of the gate, with a realistic set of benefits. But then instead of going into more and more detail, invest the time elsewhere.
Yeah. There's also this obsession of blueprint, as you call it, business case. So there's a business case and then there's blueprint. Yeah. Right? Especially in the ERP implementation. Yeah. Right. For sure. Yeah. All the consultant wants to walk away from it, and all the in-house project managers, I think blueprint is almost like a theory written that this is what we're going to do, this is what you're going to get. As you said, if you just focus on what is required for the business. But it's a two-way sword though, because the consultant also, I can't do this, I'm going to charge you extra $150 per hour because it was not on blueprint. Yeah. So I didn't know the challenges. So, and that is my complaint to us consultant as well. I didn't know that you're going to screw up my current process enough that I have to change my blueprint.
So when I hear the word blueprints, and it's still used in different projects, I think back to the ERP days of 10, 15 years ago when everything was waterfall. You would write everything down on PowerPoint or Visio or in Aris first, spend maybe 6 months or 9 months, wordsmithing everything, and then hand it over to a build partner, and they would probably go and build something completely different or their own interpretation of it. So I think now, with firstly there's cloud-based solutions which are pretty well configured already. So you're more picking the features rather than building something from scratch, and then the method. So moving a bit more towards agile. So the way we like to run things on, for example, a planning program. So we call it hybrid agile. What we do is enough design, not a full blueprint, but enough process design to understand what the major points are. We then work very closely with the tech vendor to take that down to the next level, but actually in the configuration, not just writing it on PowerPoint. And then, probably after, instead of in the old days, maybe a year, you would see the solution. Now, maybe after 3-4 months, you start to see the first screens, play it back to the business. They can decide whether it meets their requirement. They can feedback and make some adaptations. Because I think it's in everyone's interest to keep the program on track and within the boundaries that we'd agreed. So this method really helps you do that, rather than having a surprise pop out at the end.
Good. This is the one great way to explain E&Y approach. I like this. I should use this tactics of this one. All right. No, so that's fine. Any other big one before we go to the top tips?
I think that's good. Let's move on to the tips.
Top tips. So okay. So you know what? This is the best part of the episode, because here one of the most experienced consultants giving you the top 3 tips of any digitalization project. So what do you suggest? Well, I mean, you already given a lot of tips, by the way.
Yeah.
Let me summarize few, right? Especially the agile approach. Yeah. Don't waste too much time. Be light on your blueprint and your business case. Yeah. and focus on deliverables and basically getting people. So we've already given a lot of important stuff, right? So maybe one final one.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it very, very neatly,
Muddassir.
So yeah, paying attention very well. Yeah, I think in the end it comes down to, supply chain's a big function. You often have maybe 80% of the workforce, working under that umbrella.
Right.
So it always comes down to hearts and minds. So having people engaged on the pitch and ready to play with you, and then I suppose creating that winning team and all being together on the journey. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
That is actually I learned a lot, especially this the parameter part. Well, you give a number, right? They don't call it BI anymore; they call it business what?
Decision intelligence.
Decision intelligence. That's a great. I did not know this word. That's the future. Decision intelligence, and the bots and the parameters. I'm going to do more research on this because I know that's the case, and I'm focusing on the generative AI as everybody does, and see if you can make some application out of that. So that's great. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Real pleasure.
It was a great conversation. Right? How people can find you?
So feel free, ping me on LinkedIn. I'm relatively active as you are, Muddassir, as well. So yeah, I mean, we'll always come back to you, no matter how big or small the client. So reach out. Very happy to make connections.
Chris Andrews at LinkedIn. Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
I appreciate that.
Cheers,
guys.
Muddassir.
Hopefully you like this video as well. Do leave the comments because it helps us to tell the Google that or YouTube that we did something right. And like, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, keep it real. Take care. Ciao.